Welcome to the Anchor Lakewood podcast. The teachings you hear are from our Lakewood congregation that gathers Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. at Headloft Middle School. We hope you enjoy.
All right. Well, good morning, Anchor. It's so fun to be in this room again. If we haven't met, like Mason said, my name is John. I used to be the executive pastor here at Anchor for 5 or so years. And like he said, I got to play a small part in helping Mason and the team plant this Lakewood campus. Always had affinity for Mason as I reside in Northeast Tacoma. That's where Mason grew up. I think one of my favorite memories was telling Mason this rental house that my wife and I had at one point. And he's like, oh yeah, in high school, that's the house that my friends and I would ding dong ditch. As we share that connection. But it's just an absolute honor to get to be here again and see, man, you guys are doing some really cool stuff here as a church and as a community. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you're here. This is a place where we want anyone, no matter your background, no matter your experience, no matter how long you've been to church or you've never been to church, like this is a place where we want you to be comfortable and just know like you can be here. And figure out what you want out of church. Who is this Jesus? Like, this is a great place to be. And I know that's Mason and Cambria's heart. I know it's the team's heart here. And I'm like, we need this. So like, thank you for being here. Like, Anchor being here in Lakewood is amazing. I know the community says thank you. So we're really grateful to be here. This morning, we are continuing our series in the book of John. If you've been here for a little bit, you know we're going slowly through the book of John. We're taking some breaks, but we're back in it. And so last week, you guys kind of stopped mid-story. Like it's a little bit of a cliffhanger if you don't know where the story goes. We're going to pick up with this Jesus and Lazarus story. However, though, I think I want to say this. Sometimes you read parts of the Bible and it feels like that part is designed to be read super tight, super examined, like broken up into pieces, right? Like Proverbs or Psalms, even some of Paul's letters, it feels like, man, I got to really zero in on this paragraph. Other parts of the Bible are some really, really cool Jesus stories that I think we should read as a whole. This is one of those. And so we're going to read the text all the way through, and then we're going to talk about it. But before we get to the text for this week, I want to catch you up if you weren't here last week when we read the first part of the story with Jesus and Lazarus. A man named Lazarus was sick. He was the brother of Mary, not Mary, the mother of Jesus. So like Lazarus is not Jesus' uncle, but a different Mary, right? Like, and so you might have, and she has a sister named Martha. You probably heard a story about Martha and Mary and Jesus. I think we're going to get to that in the book of John in a couple of weeks. But for right now, Lazarus is sick and he is about to die. Martha and Mary send word to Jesus. They say, hey, come see Lazarus. And I think they want him to help Lazarus. And Jesus doesn't. Jesus says, nope, his sickness will not end in death. So he waits and he stays put for 2 more days, and Lazarus' sickness ends in death, right? At that point in the story. And then so finally Jesus says, okay, let's go see him. And there's some tensions at this time, right? Like Jesus' followers believe that if Jesus and his followers go to where Lazarus is sick, that the leaders at the time are going to try to kill them. And Thomas, who's this right ray of sunshine in the 12 disciples, says, all right, let's go, and we will die like Lazarus. And that's where we left off. We don't know where we're going in the story. And so this story as a whole has always been mystifying to me. Like a lot of Jesus makes sense to me, and it made sense to me from day one. Then there's other Jesus stories where, in my understanding, limited as a human, I go, what on earth are we doing here, Jesus? Yeah. And this is one of those stories. And so as we read this story, if you have questions, you're like, what is this? Like, that's okay. I do too, as we read it together. So if you have a Bible, maybe you grabbed one or you brought one, we're going to be in John chapter 11, verse 17. We'll also have it up on the screen. So picking up in John chapter 11, verse 17, it says this. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." There is a lot going on in this story. Like right off the bat, if you're like, I have doubts about Jesus, I get mad at Jesus, you are in good company in this story. Like it is filled with people angry at Jesus, even those who loved him so dearly, and people having doubts about Jesus. Like that's okay. Not like, I don't even think that like you might say Jesus rebukes their doubts, but not like rebuke's too strong of a word. I think it's just a persistent reminder, like Jesus is okay handling those things. But there's a ton of questions that come to mind when we read this story. Why is there sickness to begin with? Why is there cancer, disease, things that take people before their time? Why doesn't God always do this? Why did Jesus say last week when we talked in verse 15, "For your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there when Lazarus died"? Like, that seems really mean. Like, is Jesus a jerk? You know, like, why did Jesus stay those 2 extra days and not go? Like, why did he wait? That either seems cruel or show-offy, right? And so, like, can the Messiah be show-offy? Like, is that even possible? Like, he's Jesus. Why did Jesus cry if he knew Lazarus would be raised back to life? Jesus said, if you believe, you'll see the glory of God. And then he raised a dude from the dead. So like, why don't we get to see the glory of God that way? Is it because we don't believe enough? Whatever enough is? Like, there are so many questions. I think this is a story in the Bible that for me, a lot of times the Bible brings more answers for me. This is a story in the Bible that brings more questions than answers for me. And so what do we do with that? Like, what do we do when the Bible, that's what we're supposed to go to for answers, brings us actually more questions than answers? And I think the first thing that we can do is study it deeply. Study the words in our language as well as the language they were written in, right? The Bible was originally written in Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic, depending on which section you're reading it in. And so studying the word, though, like you can do those word studies, you can look at it deeply, but it also means more than just laser focusing on the text that we're studying. Because here's the thing, if you zero into a text in the Bible and then you come up with a conclusion that is in conflict with what the rest of the Bible says God's heart is, like you have come to a wrong conclusion, or what we sometimes call a heresy, right? Like you have to view it as a whole. And then you also need to study and understand the culture and the context in which the biblical account took place, and then the first audience that was supposed to read this story. right? Like all of that matters. And that's really overwhelming. I don't know how to do all that studying. I'm not that smart. So I read commentaries, right? Commentaries are written by super smart people who have like PhDs sometimes in ancient dead languages and these cultures, and they write down what their thoughts are and their insights are, and they study. And some of the questions that we have, like enough human studying can answer well for us, right? So like, let's take, why did Jesus wait so long? It says multiple times that Lazarus was dead for 4 days. Like that was said, I think 2 or 3 times in this story. The Bible is such a small snapshot of every historical account that it's trying to cover, right? So when an author in the Bible repeats something, it bears paying attention to. Like words are few and far between, and so when we repeat something in the Bible, that's kind of like a bright flashing sign of like, hey, pay attention to this. So why is the 4 days important? I did not know. I read a commentary. And in the commentary I read said this, that this time, in this culture, in this place, there was actually a superstition in Jewish culture. And the superstition said this, that when someone died, their soul actually lingered over the tomb or the burial site for 3 days. And so why does Jesus wait 4 days? It's intentional. It's a way that he can show God's power. It's a way that he can do a miracle in a way that people can't easily write off. Like, well, we've kind of seen that before. Like, we know the soul's there for 3 days. Like, he waits 4 days. That's intentional. And so that when we see this incredible miracle, when people hear about this incredible miracle, their first objection is like, well, how long was he dead? Which is a weird question, but it was a question. And the only explanation to this miracle is this, that God is good and powerful in ways that we've never seen before and cannot explain. Like, that's really cool. What's not cool, I think, is that there are questions that no matter how much study we do, we're not going to come up with a good logical answer on. And it's like a hyper-analytical, like that bothers me. I don't like that. I get uncomfortable with that. I want like real logical answers to this, and that's not possible sometimes because there are questions that I think can only be answered by coming to what I call a faith decision. By saying, God, I don't get how this works. I don't understand why this is the way you choose to act, but I believe in you, I trust you, and you are good. And I believe and trust that your plan and your definition of good is better than mine. And if there's a mix-up, you're like, that doesn't sound good, and it's on me, not on you, God. But we have to get that through faith. Like, you can't argue someone to that. You can't logic someone to that. That has to be a faith and a lived experience thing to get to those faith answers. Why do people die earlier than I think they should? Why do parents have to bury kids sometimes? Well, that's a faith answer. I can't logic that. Like, I can't get there logically, that doesn't make sense. Like, there has to be a point where we hit there in faith. Even C.S. Lewis, right? C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Problem with Pain. It was a really academic look at why do bad things happen to good people. And then C.S. Lewis lost a child, and he wrote A Grief Observed, which is a really cool parallel of, like, this is the faith answer to what we tried to logic, right? And, like, we have to get to these faith things. So how do we do that? I think when we're wrestling with a text in the Bible, when we're wrestling with a text in the Bible and says there's more questions here than answers, I can't logic there's like a faith barrier, I think our temptation is to push it away. It's either push the Bible away or like, I'm just going to go read a different section. Let me go read Proverbs. Like, I can get that. And so I would encourage all of us that, like, when we hit a story or a text in the Bible that we're rubbing up against, like, resist that temptation and actually do the opposite. We lean into those texts where we have more questions than answers. Because I think when we lean into a text, when we really sit in it, sometimes we get these answers that are found only by sitting and wrestling that we would never really expect. But here's the other thing. When you sit in that text, even if you never come to that faith answer on why do bad things happen to good people, why do people die early, why did God save this person and not that person, even if you can't get there, there's still really cool things that we have coming out of this text. So one of the things that stood out to me when I was reading this, and it was a little bit of cheating because my Bible said it and I liked it, is Jesus is comfort, right? Like, Jesus is comfort. The little heading in that title of the first section kind of says this in my Bible. It says that Jesus comforts the sisters of Lazarus. And when we talk about heaven and earth and God and humanity, comfort is a weird thing to think about because it's something that we only need as a result of the fall of humanity. There is no comfort in heaven, right? Heaven's amazing. You don't need comfort. Comfort is something that we only need when we experience hard things or bad things. Comfort is a uniquely human thing, and we see in this story, we actually see two ways that Jesus comforts Martha and Mary. And one we can emulate, and one we can point to. So two types of comfort from Jesus. So the one that we can emulate, the one that we can live out, is the way that Jesus shows up physically for Mary. Jesus meets with Mary, and the Bible says this, says he is deeply moved in spirit and troubled when he sees her crying. Doesn't say words. That's something you can see in his face, his demeanor, the way he carries his body. And then he himself cries. And 2 verses later, it says, once again, Jesus is deeply moved when he goes to the tomb. I think it's noteworthy how little Jesus says out loud, at least that's recorded, in these moments with Mary. Now, Martha being Martha and Jesus knowing her, he has a lot to say to Martha, and we'll get to that down the road, but he has very little to say out loud to Mary. I think it's his actions with Mary that speak volumes. Jesus shows up. He sees her grief. He sits with her. He grieves himself. He doesn't try to put a bow on Mary's grief. He doesn't try to wrap it all up and be like, it's okay. He doesn't do that. He sits with her in her grief. And I think that very act of Jesus' physical presence in this moment is in and of itself like comfort. When I was becoming a pastor, I was always freaked out by the pastoral care aspect of pastoring. Those moments where as a pastor, you show up to the hospital to talk to a family or to a spouse whose spouse is struggling. Those times that you show up in a living room and help a broken family who has nowhere else to turn. And it seemed really hard. It seemed intimidating. And it should have seemed intimidating, right? I was a 22-year-old youth pastor walking into a living room with parents the age of my parents, trying to help them figure out what's going on with their teenager whose world has fallen apart. Like, that should be intimidating. If it's not, like, you're probably doing something wrong or you're too arrogant, right? But it was scary. I remember thinking, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I don't say the right thing? What is the right thing to say? And the thing that helped me get over this was some really simple words from a mentor of mine in one of his sermons. And he said this, because he was talking about his own struggles with this, and he said, often we struggle and try to come up with the right thing to say. When someone is grieving, there is no right thing to say. They just want you to be present and love them. That's it. There are no right words. And I found that to be true in my life, right? Like when I'm hurting, that's what I want. I don't need a cliche or wise words. I want someone to sit with me and hug me and say, I'm here, and however you want to react is okay. And maybe even grieve with me so I know that I'm not alone in the big feelings that I'm having and however they look. One of the things that I said a lot in the last year or so to people experiencing hard things is like, hey, you've just gone through something that's not normal. So your body and your feelings will not have a normal reaction to that. There is no normal reaction to what you've just experienced. So you get to do whatever you want. Like, that's just, those are the rules with grief, right? And crying with someone else who's sad, that's not performative unless you're trying for it to be, right? I think it's sometimes we're like, well, they're sad and they should be sadder than me, so I can't be sad too. No. There's solidarity in that. I think a lot of times we talk about that we were wired for community, and that's in both joyous moments, but also sorrowful moments. Community has to go both ways. In the big life events and the mundane things and the happy things and the sad things, we were supposed to do this together, right? And Jesus models this type of comfort really well for us that we can do. But we also see in the story a type of comfort from Jesus that we can't model, but we can point to. And this is in his conversation with Martha. So the person I relate to so much in the story is Martha. See, in her conversation with Jesus, she's kind of holding back. She's couching her words a little bit. She's holding back. Martha doesn't have hope for today, so she's putting it off as hope for tomorrow. She says, even now I know God will give you whatever you ask. Man, she's dancing around it. She's like, Jesus, can you turn back time? Jesus, can you bring Lazarus back from the dead? Even now, she's not even able to say it. She can't even directly ask for what she hopes for because it's too big, but she hints at it. We do this in our prayers. God, I really would want this, unless it's not your will. Then I don't want to ask for it. That's 2%. Ask for it. But even then, right, Jesus responds, he's like, he tells her the story. He's like, Lazarus will rise again. She's like, I know, the resurrection on the last day, we're all going to rise again, Jesus, I get it. And Jesus says, do you believe in me? And I still don't think Martha knows what's going to happen at this point. Like Jesus has said, I'm going to raise Lazarus from the dead, but she puts it off and fully locked into eternity and never daring to hope for a miracle here and today.
That's good.
And I get that. Miracles are hard to come by, and there are hundreds of Lazaruses in the Bible or in our own lives who are never raised back from the dead, and we don't know why. And I don't have an answer to why Lazarus and why not those people. It's got to be a faith answer. But I do know that the story is here for a reason. And I do know that what the theologian Charles Spurgeon calls Martha's even now, prayer is included for a reason. Even now, in the midst of darkness, of grief, of brokenness, of disappointment in Jesus, even now, maybe God, could you do a miracle? And I get it. It's hard to boldly ask for things that we want and see that might not be answered in the way that I think it should. And that sometimes is too much of an ask if you're struggling, if you're grieving, if you're hurting. So maybe you can't pray a bold prayer, but could you be someone who does an even now prayer? That in the midst of your grief, in the midst of your brokenness, believes, and my friend Matt Lyons said this, and I love it, I've never forgot, he said it years ago. He said, Jesus brings us hope not just for life eternal, but life present. And that's so good, and I love that. And can we be a people that, like, maybe that bold prayer is too much, but we can do an even now prayer and say, God, I know that there's hope in life eternal, but maybe there's still hope in life present. So we have these two types of comfort, right? The soft, grieving presence of Jesus that we can imitate, and this incredible expectation surpassing comfort that only comes from God. And in it, we actually see two things, right? Like, we see this cool thing of Jesus being both fully human and fully God. So the next thing I want you to write down is this, like, let's stay rooted in this, but like, Jesus is human. Jesus is human. Maybe not right now, but he was, right? And maybe he still is. Like, God and Jesus and our sense of time don't really match. Like, I think there's an argument that they exist outside of our concept of time because we're so limited. Whether Jesus is or Jesus was, whichever one you want to say, I don't think it matters. Because what is a big deal is the humanity of Jesus. That whether he was or he is, Jesus is both fully God and fully human. And Christianity is the only religion where a God who is perfect and fully divine comes to earth to become a human. It's the only one. Like, there are other religions with shadows of deities who come down, or stories of people who strived and ultimately become a God-type figure, but this is the only religion, the only faith where we see what we call the incarnation of Jesus the God becoming Jesus the man and being both fully human and fully God at the same time. It means that we can see, because Jesus is human, like, we can see how Jesus comforts Mary by his soft, grieving presence and emulate that. It brings depth and validity to the teachings of Jesus because we know he knows what it's like to be a human in this broken, messed up world. It says in verse 32, Jesus was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. We've all felt that. And I think that the lessons and the teachings of Jesus mean more to us when we know that they're not coming from a God who sits on high and instructs us, but a God who chose to be in the mess and experience that mess with us. I think that standalone verse of Jesus wept, I think is so cool. Jesus taking time to grieve shows that we need to take time to grieve as humans. Like, especially in our American culture, like, we suck at grieving. Like, we're really bad at it. We don't take time. We don't allow for it. And I think it's problematic. Jesus, just like we say, hey, we Sabbath because God rested, we get to take time to grieve because Jesus did. Jesus sits in the mess, in the unfinishedness of someone dying too early. He shows us that we don't need to wrap things up with a bow. He doesn't go, Martha, you're right. Lazarus will be raised up at the end of all things, and hallelujah, because heaven and eternity is the only matter. We're but strangers here on earth, and it's okay. Like, he doesn't do that. He sits there, and it's like, this is hard. Like, if Jesus gets to sit and say, man, life is hard and broken and tough, like, don't we get to as well? Jesus isn't in a rush. And it's so important for us to follow that example, right? And so I think because Jesus was fully human in addition to being fully God, right, this gets to be instructive for us. However, because Jesus is fully divine, I actually think that like in the coolest, most positive way, like there's some performative stuff about this miracle. Like this is a little bit of a show in the coolest sense. And so again, Jesus is this, he's future focused. Jesus is future focused. I think that Jesus did this miracle in this way, in this timing, in this fashion, because he was using it to further God's plans in a really significant way. Jesus lived a short life, right? 33-ish years. And for the last 3 or so years of that life was what we call Jesus' public ministry. It's interesting. If you watch the path, the arc of those 3-ish years that he's doing public ministry, as the years start, he kind of shies away from the fact that he is God. Right? People say you're the Messiah. He's like, yeah, don't tell anyone. Because he knows that if word gets out too fast, too quick, it's going to speed everything up. And Jesus has a plan. He has a timeline. This miracle is a significant moment, right? Like Jesus waits past the superstition of 3 days for the soul to linger. He raises someone from the dead. He does it publicly. And as we'll see in the probably next week here, this kicks off the plot to kill Jesus. This is such a brazen act of divinity, of godhood, of messiahness to raise someone from the dead that the false religious leaders of the time have to be threatened. It's a line in the sand moment. And Jesus does use it to share the gospel. Outside the tomb, there are so many witnesses. And Martha says, are you sure? It smells really bad in there, Jesus. And he says, didn't I tell you, if you believe in me, you will see God's glory? And then Jesus lays it out. He straight up says, this is it. This is everything in this one little sentence in there. He says, God, thank you for hearing my prayers. I know people might think it's a little weird for me to pray like a human, and I know you always hear me, God, but I'm saying this, and this is the quote from the Bible now, for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. Jesus is laying it all out there in a publicly showy way that he really hasn't done. He commands Lazarus to come out. This is him fully God. And Jesus did this for the future, to set into motion the plans that people had to kill him, to set up what evil men believed would crush the followers of Jesus, but would instead be used by God to create what I believe is the most significant faith movement in the history of the world. That a small group of outcasts and broken people ended up spreading the good news of Jesus around the world because of the power of God. Good news that is still good news for me and for you today. We see the power of God because God says, look, I know sometimes you need to see this. You need to see me raise someone from the dead to believe that you have hope for yourself. I think when we see God work in the lives of other people, it can give us that hope that maybe God could do that for me too. And I've done some bad things, but man, if God could raise someone from the dead, then maybe there's hope for a broken person like me. And if you're here today and you've never said yes to Jesus, we would love for you to say yes to Jesus today. To say, God, I know I'm broken. God, I know I've made mistakes. God, I know, I don't know if there's any hope, but I believe that there might be hope in you, and I want to try things your way and believe in you. And saying yes to Jesus. In a little bit, we're going to head into another time of worship. We're going to have communion available. And as we do that, before we head into that, I want you to just kind of sit and say, God, what do you want me to take away from this today? There's a few things that might be for you. Maybe for you, it's this idea of comfort. Maybe God put on your heart someone in your life who is grieving, someone in your life who is hurting, and you felt really awkward or maybe even scared and said, God, I think I'm going to mess this up. Maybe your takeaway today is this: to go be with that person. Just sit with them and trust that there are no right words, and your presence and that you love them is enough. Maybe you're here and you are grieving. And you feel alone in that grief. Maybe for you today, it's just, can you text a friend and say, hey, can you come sit with me? I just can't be alone right now. Maybe there's an even now prayer that you have that God's placed on your heart and you're saying, I need to be bold to ask God even now. Maybe you're here and you need to lean into the humanity of Christ. You need to commit to I've wrapped things up with a bow too much. It's okay for me to sit in this brokenness. Maybe there's something years ago and you're like, God, I've never actually healed or processed from that. Maybe you're here and you're saying, man, there's good news for you, and I'm going to say yes to Jesus, and today's the day. I'd love to pray with you about that. Maybe you're here and going, man, this is such a good reminder, a good reflection of there is good news for people, and I haven't been sharing that enough, and I want to share that with someone today. There's someone in my job, there's someone in my life, someone on my kids' sports team, and it feels weird, it feels awkward, but I think God might be telling me to say this good news to them. I just ask that I'm going to pray for us, and as I pray, would you consider what God is asking you to walk away from the word this week with? Would you guys stand as we pray and go into this time of worship and communion? God, we thank you for Jesus. God, we thank you that he is both human and God, that he gets us, that he understands what it's like to be in this world. God, we thank you for miracles that we see. We thank you that you are a God not just of hope for life eternal, but hope for life present as well. God, may we be a community that believes that leans into that is known for that is known for grieving well, for sitting with people well, for crying out and saying, God, will you show up here today? God, we thank you for the ways that we've already seen that in this room, the stories, God, and we're grateful and expectant of more stories like that to come. And so, God, would you be with us today? Would you press into our hearts what you want us to walk away from here with, God? We thank you. In your name, amen.